Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great day. I am Ryan Crandall, and today I'm joined with Eric from Tech Sales Ascension, one of the co-founders, as well as if you guys have seen his channel, Tech Sales with Eric. Pretty amazing guy. He's put out a lot of great content. I know you guys have recognized him. I've been following him, and I've watched maybe not every video, but definitely a good number of videos. And I think you get incredible content. I know you have a great following. And today we wanted to kind of sit down, talk about maybe some tips, some recommendations, career paths, kind of a little bit of everything. I guess starting off, for people who might not know, they would love to hear your story, how you got in. I know you have an amazing athletic background, and you've done sales before you got into tech sales and engineering. So I guess first question, we'd love to hear a little bit about your background and your story.
Yeah. So the really short version, and thanks for having me, by the way, but the short version, so I went to college to study engineering. I actually really didn't have any that much sales experience, and I graduated, and at the same time in college, I was training with Team USA in the sport of team handball. And so I graduate at the time, I got a really great offer in engineering, thought it was the path for me. Super long story short, I get about 6 months into it and realized I did not like it at all, is the nice way to say that. And I unfortunately, I was kind of in a weird position. I had student loans. I wanted to keep playing team handball, but I also was trying to find the balance of being practical and not just quitting my job. So I kind of stuck it out for 3 years, but by the end of it was really done, to be honest. And then ended up taking a year off playing team handball overseas. And I knew at some point coming back into the workforce, I wanted to do tech sales. So oddly enough, a little side story maybe for another time, but when I kind of finished up, so I played in a world championship in 2019. When I finished there, I actually started a small coffee business to fill the time while I was starting to look into the workforce.
Whoa, okay.
And yeah, and I would say in some strange way, that was the first sales experience I had. But then also I had a lot of exposure to it in my engineering role. I was a support engineer. So there were times where I was hopping on sales calls with salespeople. And it also got to the point too, where I would be on those calls with limited sales training and felt like I was doing as good of a job as those people, or certainly had the ability to, right? And so longer term, not liking the direct engineering role, I knew that was where I was going to go. Ended up applying to a bunch of different companies and found a database company. And long story short, we're about 4 years in now. I've been very fortunate. It's gone really well. But yeah, I guess in conclusion, and definitely open to questions, but I basically got 2 years into it, had a really great run and really enjoyed it. And when I looked on the internet, there was some great content, but nothing really specific on tech sales.
Yeah.
And I felt like that, having gone through that journey, transitioning careers myself, that's really where I started. Because I was even sitting in on SDR interviews and I saw people coming in, having no real idea what tech sales is actually like, and ended up making, 5 or 6 videos, walked away for 3 months and then came back, and one of them had actually started to take off a little bit and kind of went from there. So anyway, that's a 2-minute rundown, but yeah, that's how it started. So
very cool. And I'm just because I love sports personally. What do you think? How do you feel sports kind of prepared you for sales, or how to contribute? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I know a lot of people in the US may not be too familiar with team handball, but it's basically like soccer with your hands, and it's a very fast-paced game, and there's a high scoring. So I was actually a goalie, and when you have a good day in goal, if you save 30% of shots or 40% of shots, that's incredible. So when you are successful if you succeed 3 out of 10 times. And I think that's a really interesting talk I've had with a lot of the students I support now through our course, where I think it's not, I'm not anti-establishment, no college, but I think we're so used to getting the immediate feedback of a test that gives you a real number that says 95%, okay, I'm great. Whereas it's a really different mindset in sales. In honestly, many cases, you're going to lose more times than you win, and you can still be incredibly successful losing more times than you win. So I think in that case, that's how athletics really prepared me, not to be judgmental on myself, not to seek immediate feedback, and understand that success isn't the person who there's no one in sales that closes every single one of their deals, right?
Yeah.
So there's many more things, but I think that all ties back to even temperament. You can avoid the highs and lows when you understand that and accept that, and really just keep putting yourself out there. So yeah.
I feel like I was going to ask this a little bit later, but I feel like it's a good segue on what do you think makes somebody successful at tech sales? Are there different versions of a person, or is there kind of one mindset?
Yeah, there's definitely elements. I think the biggest thing for me is obviously you don't have to have a technical background to be in tech sales. That said, like confidence really does come from competence. And I'm not the first person to say that, but I think there's a lot of salespeople who think they can kind of like BS their way through it. And it's really the ones that if you're at a company for any length of time, when you really know the product, like that is the foundation. And obviously you have to implement, sales methodologies, and you've really got to learn trial by fire and put yourself out there. But I think at the simplest level, it's like someone who's willing to put in a ton of work, especially year one and year two. I mean, that's really where you cut your teeth, not only within your own company, but if you're really committed to sales for the long haul, you're obviously deep diving into your product. You're deep diving, on nights and weekends, not even 100 hours a week, but just, here and there, making a consistent effort, an hour a day outside of work to read Challenger Sale, to listen to some of the top sales podcasts, to do all these different things, to just really take it all in. And then from there, you can kind of, as you come into your own style and get better and better, that's, yeah. So I don't know if that directly answered the question.
No, that's really good. It actually was another question I was going to ask, because in sales, I feel like amateurs versus pros do continuous improvement. They're always reflecting, they're always measuring themselves. They're always searching for and trying stuff in the field of like what works, what doesn't work, what are the best people doing, what can I try to kind of try in my own style, like, be congruent and authentic, but, still use the methodology. Like, do you have any kind of tips on that of continuous improvement or things people should like look out for?
Yeah, I think on the note of continuous improvement, yeah, I mean, I agree. I think for me, one of the biggest things that's relevant to me this year, I think, is I'm in a unique role where I'm a specialist for one product of many that my company sells. And oftentimes it's really my job to go in and actually disqualify and make sure and really make sure it's even a fit or even worth us talking. And I think among many, many other skills, to your point, that you need to measure, you need to, see growth towards. I think for me, this year especially has been really understanding signal versus noise. You get to a point where you can sniff something out when you get enough repetition, when you're really going hard and trying to learn as much as you can. I'm not going to debate on 20-hour weeks or anything like that. And I'm definitely putting in way more than that. But I will say there's times where early in my career, I wanted to win all the time. And there's many more cases this year, I would say, where I've snuffed something out in call one or call two and just been like, hey, I don't think this is a fit at this time. If you want to come back and, I'm happy to have this conversation if you do X, Y, and Z, or if you still feel you need this, but we're not there yet, as one example of many. And, but yeah, I mean, that all kind of intermingles with continuous improvement as a rep. But I also think, people are afraid to not spend time, like you feel very productive early in your career by doing a ton of outbound and all of these different things. And as you get further and further, you can actually get the same result in 40 hours as you can in 60 if you're really, really smart about it. And so there's many things to break down there, but yeah, that's I would say the mantra for me this year. So
very nice. I have a side note question. I'm going to wait till the end. Otherwise I'm going to get too off trajectory. I guess talking now a little bit about other people, their careers, somebody trying to break in, how does the average person break into tech sales?
Yeah. Let me, I think
another question, I know.
Yeah. No, I would say if there's anything, I mean, let's not be naive. Like if you have absolutely zero experience, you've got a long ways to go. I think that said, like, even if it's academics or sports or some group that you're a part of or anything, people really discount the experience they have being relevant to tech sales. And I would also say in my opinion, there's no other career. Again, I'm not saying it's just like anyone and everyone, and there's very much a pattern and things to learn to do this effectively, but there's no other career where you can really, once you get in the interview, in my opinion, the floodgates are wide open and you have to continue to perform and show your ability. But I think, for instance, like I actually had a conversation with someone yesterday who joined our course that is 35, they don't have a college degree, they've built their own business. And they're like, do I have the background to be in tech sales? I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, do you understand that like a lot of the other people interviewing for this is like a 22-year-old who got a history degree, who doesn't even have that much passion about tech sales? Like you have started your own business. You have found a way to be successful without a traditional path of a college degree. You've sold people packages for thousands of dollars. Like, you're so far ahead of where the average person is in tech sales. And I think of one thing of many, I think people really discount and don't know, or are afraid to try and show how their background may be relevant. And I could keep breaking this down, and feel free with questions, but I'd say, again, when you package that correctly, when you go out of your way to watch your channel, to watch my channel and other reputable channels, and start to understand the space and really start thinking in that language, there's a lot that you have to do to get in that position. But once you're in there, you'd be surprised at how many people would give you an opportunity. Many companies at the SDR level are not expecting you to be a top performer day one. They're just looking for those raw skills. And I mean, not even in a bad way, they hire lots of SDRs with the expectation that some won't make it. So like, don't feel like you've got to be the perfect person right now. But there's so many things you can do that make you stand out that I think people don't even know or take for granted. So yeah, hopefully that helps. So
no, that really helps. I know you talk a little bit about this in your program, but if you could touch on it, common mistakes that people make maybe on a resume or in an interview that maybe they don't realize are disqualifying them, and kind of what those would be.
Yeah, I think it's not getting specific enough. And what I mean is a couple of fronts. So certainly on the resume and the LinkedIn, people don't think of the things that they did in the context of revenue, right? Because when I'm selling software, as an example, myself, yes, we have to find technical fit, and that's a skill set required that you can learn without a technical background. But also, when you're asking someone to pay $250,000 for a solution, you have to have the business justification. And so, for example, when I was an engineer, I was supporting a lot of key accounts. There was, as an example, like the biggest computer operating system company in the world. I'll let you figure out who that is. I don't know if I can say it publicly, but like, I supported them. They called me on a Friday. They had a production line down in China, and they were losing $100,000 per hour that they couldn't manufacture devices. And so I ended up like, these are the types of stories that when I broke into tech sales are really great. Even though I wasn't necessarily part of the sale, like the fact that I can understand the implications of my actions in the context of revenue and a broader outcome for the business is where I see a lot of people like being shy, or even, even just the way that I said that, it sounds like this big majestic thing. But even if you, I don't know, you did something at your service job or otherwise that saved time by 10%, or you found a way to upsell something in your retail sales job that no one else was doing, right? These are small things that you can articulate that show you're thinking in the way of B2B business. And then lastly, if I could throw this in there, I think when one thing I talk a lot about is messaging hiring managers, SDR managers, when you're actually applying, and people hear that and their gut instinct is to just message them. And there's a difference between a low quality message and a high quality message. And it's kind of the same thing. Like if you're like, hey, I'm a really driven person, I like tech, I'm really excited about being an SDR, like who cares? That's a carbon copy of what anyone could say. That tells me nothing about why you're a fit. And same thing on the resume, right? It goes back into that. And it's the difference between saying that versus like, hey, here's a quick, I've been in retail sales selling $5,000 packages. I really like your company because of X, Y, and Z, and was wondering, in addition to the application I just submitted, if we could connect for 15 minutes, And there's subtle things that people aren't doing. And part of it is like, if you've never done this, you don't know. But there's so many small things that are out there for free if you can connect the dots or want paid coaching that I think people take for granted and just don't even know how to do properly. So yeah, super long answer there for you.
No, that was really good. And I have few of my own personal clients, like they're hiring everything. And we have like a job ad. This morning, a person sends me a LinkedIn message that says, I am really good. I was like, I'm sure you are, but
I've been looking for someone like you. Yeah.
Try to give me a little more, like, a little more than just that, a little more why. Okay, perfect. So one of your videos that I was checking out recently, I really, really liked, and there's a lot of videos currently on tech sales of like, I just made $500,000 in 90 days. You can too. Like, what are actually kind of realistic expectations for people? Because I want them to like, I feel like that they don't get that, they're going to get really down on themselves. Like, why is it not happening to me? It's easy to get burnt out if they don't understand what's an actual timeline of people.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's a great question and something I try to stay really consistent on. So, and I appreciate you bringing that up. like, don't get me wrong, people have awesome years. And like, I have had one of those myself. I had a crazy month one time where at the end of my fiscal half, I was at 101% of quota. And then I closed a deal by itself that was 138% of my quota. So I basically hit 200, like, so that entire deal was in accelerators. It was an amazing time, but these are things that happen, you know, maybe if you're lucky once a year, but realistically once every 3 to 5 years. But that said, again, like one, I think sales itself is a very lucrative career. It's not to say that it's, you know, even if you hit your number, like if you're making 100K a year, 200K a year, like that's a great career. But yeah, I think for me, the way that I look at it and hopefully answers the question directly, like in my mind, when I decided to make the transition to sales, I you know, hated engineering, and more power to them. You know, there's really smart people that do that. For me, when I broke into sales, my mindset was like, I'm going to do this for 5 years for better or worse. And like, whatever happens, happens. But that was my mindset. And I think it really helped because yes, I wanted more money. I mean, let's not be shy, and that has played out. I am making more than I did as an engineer. But at the same time, really year one and year two, I mean, I didn't even really care that much about my comp structure or commission. I definitely looked at it and wasn't naive, but my mindset was like year one and year two, I could really care less about the outcome. I want to study everything I can about sales. And that has progressed me further than anything. And then on the note of actually putting, you know, more numbers of what you can expect, like obviously if you've seen any videos, you know, entry level SDR roles are on the low side, maybe 65 to 100, you know, in some good cases. I've had some students, you know, at 115. But really, again, like hit your quota as an SDR, you can make a healthy salary. In my mind, again, it's always been that 3 to 5 year play where you can start getting to those corporate and enterprise AE roles. I mean, that's where your OTE is really getting, you know, 200, 300K, which is insane to me, you know. So if that was kind of a non-answer to your direct question, but I think, again, if you have that long-term mindset, like, I don't think you should shy away from the fact that you want more money, but look at it like 5 years from now, if I commit to this, the upside is substantial. And if you have that mindset, I can give numbers and things of that nature, but really, if you don't have that mindset and you think it's going to happen year one or even year two, it might, but there's a difference between having one blowout year and having a sustained career where you're hitting or exceeding your number, you know, 80+% of the time. So, yeah.
I think that's very accurate. And people, when I talk on my channel, usually I say, like, give yourself 6 months to learn like the product, the industry, the vocabulary that you're going to be using, and at least 2 years to really get the skills down, right? How you're doing your lead generation, how you're doing your closing, how you structure your day. 2 to 5 years is kind of the sweet spot, I think, for people to like, oh, I just jumped up, or I had this down. Now it's on autopilot. I know how to kind of like maneuver in the industry and know what to do in certain situations. So I think that's very on point.
I was going to say, if I could even add one thing, you know, from my own story, like I've kind of found this weird niche in tech sales where I've brought the 3 companies I've worked at, I brought 3 new products to market. And the first company I was at in particular, like, I did not hit my number the first 6 months, but I struggled through it. It was a brand new product that we had. No one, I might add, was hitting their number. And because I just kept going after it, I was kind of the first person that found out how to sell this thing. And then fast forward a year and a half later, where the first 6 months were just like horrible, you know, it's like eating glass every day. That next year and a half, I went on to sell. I was basically 250,000 short of outselling my entire company by myself of this new product. And so, like, that's the thing I would say is, like, that's not even braggadocious. I don't really get like a ton of pride from that. It's more just like, it will feel like you are not making any progress at all. And then out of nowhere, you'll have 3 or 6 months where everything just comes together. All these deals that were kind of in pipeline and just stalling for one way, shape, or form, if you continue to work them, you'll just gain a lot of momentum. And it's like going back even to that example of like a test, or even my engineering job, where you have pretty standard metrics. Like, you do have quota and all these things in sales, but it's like the progress, I would say, more than any other career, is rather exponential, where you will feel like an idiot for like 6 months or a year getting into it. And then all of a sudden you just start closing things. You don't feel like you're doing anything different, but you're just starting to perform because you've stuck with it. You kept improving and all these different things, you know? So.
Definitely. Not to give too much. So I know you have, Tech Sales Ascension, and you guys have just recently launched that, and congratulations again. I don't know if you can give us a little bit of I don't know, a sample size of what to expect, but what kind of separates, your program versus kind of some other ones on the market?
Yeah, I think for me, when I look back at my own experience, I was really lucky from my engineering career to have engineers that I went to school with or had worked with that ultimately transitioned to sales. So when I was breaking back into the workforce, having literally people I could call was a huge help. And so, don't get me wrong, we have an insane amount of coursework. And I think the consistent feedback that I get from our students that have taken multiple is, and the beauty is it's a collection of reps, I might add. It's not just me. Like I don't claim to be the best. I'm very focused on highly technical sales, but I've gotten 2 other reps that have contributed to our curriculum. And I think it's great because you get multiple perspectives, not just me being like, here's what I do that.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd add, 2 other points is we go to an insane depth on the application process. We certainly cover SDR. We go really deep on messaging, on cold calling, all these things. But really, if you're trying to break in, definitely learn what you can about those. But a lot of the focus needs to be on taking action on the interview side. And then lastly, I think, it's really important to me to have live coaching as a part of that. And whether it's me, whether it's my co-founder, Chris, who's crushing it as an SDR right now, that's a huge thing to me, is having live access to the instructors, people that are still in it every day. And I think the coursework that we have, there's been some students that have just done that and broken in, but I've also seen students where it really starts to click when we're having real conversations, all these things that is in their head and they can't quite get it like perfect. When we have these live coaching sessions, it really all comes together and we've seen some awesome results. So yeah, sorry, I kind of took the floor there and gave you multiple answers,
No,
but yeah.
No. I know it's got a lot of different things. What would you say is if people are looking into sales, maybe is there any books that you read or methodologies that you found that like kind of worked a little bit better than others in I guess tech sales? I know certain industries use different ones, but what would you say tech sales kind of focuses in?
Yeah, I think this is a double-edged sword. So with tech sales, I think, if you can get a lot from videos and you can act on it, I honestly think like YouTube and or, a course that you've done your research, you feel good about is a good path as opposed to a book. And the reason that I say that is like, books are solid. Like if you have fundamentally zero understanding of sales, you haven't been in that environment at all. Some books that come to mind are customer-centric selling, maybe challenger sale. The reason I'm a little hesitant, and you can hear it in my voice, is like, if you think that reading, like, let me answer it the other way. The best way to break into tech sales is probably to fail at 5 to 10 interviews at least. And then it's going to snap into place really quickly. Because if you read a book and you think that's going to teach you how to interview, how to present yourself and your background, versus like focus on getting the job. Again, if you want to go the YouTube Academy, youtube.com, or you want to go the paid route, either's fine. But you're really going to get the most experience getting into those interviews and honestly failing. And if you can take that and come back, you've got the skill set there. The second you get a job that you're happy about, that's when you start reading, right? The second you've actually made a cold call and you sucked and you feel like you don't know what you're doing, that's a good time to bring in the reading and really go hard on content, whatever it may be. Because at that point in time, it's now relevant. It's like if you're reading about how to cold call and you've never made one, there's diminishing returns, right? It's going to be good if you see a couple of videos, but if you're watching 10 hours of content on how to make a cold call and you don't have an SDR job, like what's the point? So anyway.
No, I think that's great. You should be doing practical application while you're kind of practicing at the same time. And that's the only way you're going to really it's going to stick in your memory, and you'll be able to kind of constantly on a daily basis reflect on this is working, this is not working. Yeah.
And I'd say if there's gun to my head, if I have to choose one book for you, I would say customer-centric selling, only in the sense that I think, the perception, there's a lot more content now. So I think it's getting a lot better. But customer-centric selling, again, my vertical or my focus is always highly, highly technical sales. And it is not aggressive sales tactics. Like, yes, there's cold calling, but it's much more consultative in nature, to oversimplify. And I think that book, if you feel like you don't know anything about sales, actually helps you kind of not feel like you've got to be super aggressive or anything. It really lays out how you can consult customers and how you can actually meet them at their point of need and things of that nature. So, yeah.
Perfect. This is a little more of kind of career coaching question, but besides job ads, what are some other methods that people who want to break in, what are some other ways that they can kind of start looking in their markets or looking to find those opportunities?
Yeah, I think, really, in my mind, it's kind of a free tidbit, and I've talked about this on some other videos. I think LinkedIn is generally the source of truth for me in terms of opportunities. As you grow in your career, you'll have a network too. And, I even haven't, in the most recent job change I made, I didn't even go on LinkedIn. I actually had a colleague of mine refer me in. And but if you're at zero, if you're trying to break in, what I always recommend is start with LinkedIn. Those are usually the most active opportunities. There are sites like RepView that are starting to do job listings, so we'll see where that goes, and that's a great site as well. But really, I always recommend apply, and then same day message the hiring manager or the HR person overseeing that job listing, because one, so many people don't, and even of the people that do, there's so many that do it poorly. And so, like, the job boards are a starting point, and I'm kind of also giving you not a direct answer to your question, but LinkedIn, start there. But if you're not messaging the hiring manager, especially now when there's 100 plus applicants per SDR listing, like, good luck. So it's really on you to take the initiative, like an SDR. Message that person. You can even cold call using some free tools on the internet, finding their number if you're feeling crazy. So, yeah.
Perfect. All right, I had that one little bonus question I wanted to ask, because you were talking a little earlier, and I know how packed your day is and how much energy you have to put out. How do you stay so energized? It's pretty amazing.
I mean, if I'm being honest, lots of coffee. Probably too much. And then, I think a big thing for me is fitness. Admittedly, this year it's been, when I was right out of my athletic career, it was no problem. It has been really difficult this year. I'm traveling on site, which I really enjoy. But yeah, I mean, if you're not getting a solid workout in, I would say ideally 3 times a week, it's really difficult to sustain a lot of performance. So it's trying to find the balance. Also, I would say on days where I'm absolutely jammed, like if I have an hour, but for lunchtime, actually walking away and actually clearing my mind, like, being on calls for 4 hours in a row is very difficult, and you have to come in every single one of those hours and treat every single customer like they're a new person, and like you're genuinely interested in what they're doing, and it's really easy to let your guard down. So yeah, fitness, absolutely key. Diet should be pretty solid. I don't have like a specific science that I follow there, but at a minimum, you should be in good shape. And then from there, really not being afraid to take breaks when you need it, and when you can build that into your schedule. And even now, there's some days where I get so busy, I actually have 2 3-hour blocks on my calendar every week where I say, like, you have to ask for my time, like, ask me if you want a meeting here, otherwise I'm not taking it. So those are some tips of many. Yeah,
use that. It's a good idea.
Yeah. So
perfect. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm into fitness too, and we could maybe have a separate conversation another time. I'm sure we could get into it. I guess so for people who are interested, obviously with Tech Sales Ascension, you're already having success. What can people expect if they join? Kind of the road. What kind of other things can they expect through kind of your program?
Yeah, and I think I'd restate too. The whole goal in making this was to try and make it affordable, and also get perspective from multiple reps. I think that's one thing that really stands out to me. Is my co-founder Chris is an incredibly detailed person, and some people really gravitate and have success with his style. I would say, to oversimplify, I'm a little bit more creative. I'm much more improvisational. I like to figure things out on my feet, which is a blessing and a curse, if I don't put in the preparation. But I think that's a big thing, is you're going to get multiple perspectives from people who have totally different styles, but have also had success with both of those, right? There's not a one size fits all. And then I'd say too, I try and give a lot of free value on my YouTube. The real value of the course is that it's very structured. Like, if you are finding yourself watching a lot of videos or not knowing where to start, and you want something that takes all that doubt out and just gives you something to really follow and execute on, that's where I see a ton of value, and obviously the live coaching as well. I would say, last thing, it's like, consistently the feedback is like how much depth we go into the interview process. I think we just help people, again, going back to an earlier point, really understand and not come from a place of insecurity of feeling like not having sales experience puts them at a huge disadvantage. There's so many ways that you can prepare. There's so many ways that you can put yourself in a position to win. And I think we just streamline that process and make it really simple, and also support you with actual live support from us the whole way. So that might have been way long of an answer for that, but yeah.
Well, that's amazing. So obviously, you guys definitely, audience out there, definitely check out, Eric's channel. Got some great advice on there, and definitely check out Tech Sales Ascension. I'll link it in the description so you guys can check that out. Of course, Eric, thanks again for joining me today. Any last minute tips, recommendations for kind of the people out there?
Man, I think the thing that comes to mind right now is just, and I know we've had conversations offline about it, it's just even temperament. It's like sales is a roller coaster, both breaking in, both, trying to go from SDR to account executive. The more you do it, the more you realize like what's actually signal, what's actually noise. And I think, again, it's like, I just see a lot of people from my own experience creating, content online and whatnot. Like there's been a lot of people that have had success. And there's also a lot of people that I think mentally get so like breaking into tech sales is like the ultimate goal. And it's just the beginning. I think there's a real difference between breaking in and being successful long-term. And it takes a lot of energy and momentum to break in if you're in that position now. But also, again, that's step one, and that's a huge step to take. And now also being successful long-term is another part of the game. And I think just stick with it. There's going to be times that you don't feel like you know what you're doing at all. And then you'll wake up 3 years later and you win a company award, and fundamentally you don't feel that much different. You're just a little bit smarter. You're a little bit more efficient. You've learned a lot from your failures, and yeah, it's a long game. So yeah.
Very good advice. Very, very good advice. Yeah. Use all the tools that you have, be consistent, be persistent. And if you can learn from other people who have been there before, who have those results, you can get there a little quicker. So
Definitely.
Always be kind of like trying that out, but be consistent. Don't give up.
Yeah,
awesome. Eric, thanks again for joining me and everyone else out there. Love to do some more collaborations in the future. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. Really appreciate it. So.
You're welcome. All right, guys.